down. So just to say, my name's Debbie. I work at LSE Library. As I said, we've got a co-host, Maria, who's also from LSE Library, who's going to be checking the chat. I'm going to hand over to Patricia and Andrea in their house for their socially distanced performance in a moment. And I'm going to send around, if there's any links that come up, I'm going to send around an email tomorrow with a link to Patricia's book, which is partly what this performance has come from. And if there's anything else, then I can also send around links to that too tomorrow in an email. So hopefully you got the emails from me and Eventbrite with all the stuff for today, so you know all the kind of moderating rules, all the questions will be asked on chats. So Patricia and Andrea will perform for about half an hour, 45 minutes, and then if you've got any questions, just put them on chat as they come through, and I'll try and ask you to ask them yourself, so you can unmute yourself to ask a question, or if you'd rather me ask it, then just say on chats, you know, ask them this, and I can say who it's come from. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing the image, and there they are. And basically we will, okay, great. So basically Patricia approached me about doing this performance at the LSE, the Women's Library, and we would have been doing it tonight in the Shore Library, which is a fantastic venue in the room, which is very kind of apt, sort of early 20th century room in the old academic building, I should say. But we decided we'd try and do this on Zoom anyway. So I think it's the first time for Patricia on Zoom, but Andrea's an old hand. So we have tested this works. And with spacing and with the sound and stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over to them in a moment, and I'll unmute myself, so you should only have them, so your sound isn't distorted. So it is really important, because it is a performance, not to have any sound until after the performance, and you can unmute yourselves. Okay, so part of the reason we're doing this today is also because it's 150 years since the Married Women's Property Act. Caroline Norton, who's going to feature quite heavily in this performance, was a campaigner and also a writer. And I think if people know about her campaigns and her marriage, that may be all they know about, if they know anything about Caroline. But actually she was a prolific poet, and a lot of her poems were put to music. And music was a big part of the Victorian period, well, a big part of women singing and entertainment in the evenings. So it's really important that we think about that side of her as well. So I'm going to hand over to Patricia, and I'll mute myself, who's going to introduce and basically lead us through songs by Victorian women for the next half an hour or so. Thank you. Take it away, Patricia.
Thank you, Debbie. Can everybody see? Everybody see? Very good. This is Andrea. Hello. At the piano, and I'm Patricia. And it always really frustrates me when people say that, you know, we don't have any women, that women composers are in the minority, because a lot of the time people are not counting all the women who wrote domestic song, which was really the only avenue that they had open to them for a very long time. And within that form, there were a lot of very, very excellent and very popular women composers. And really the earliest one in the book that I've just written, in the CD that we've recorded, is Caroline Sheridan Norton, for obvious reasons. And also because her songs are very, very nice. They're very pleasant. This one, the first one we're going to do 6 songs, 3 of them by her, and then 3 by others from around the same period, Victorian. And this first one is her most well-known one. It's her greatest hit. However, if you get a copy of it, and it was published by many, many different publishers, there were no rules preventing this from happening. It often says Old Spanish Air and doesn't even have her name. She wrote it for her son, Brinsley, who was ill at the time. This was in 1853, when she had been reunited with her children, whom she couldn't see for so long, for the reason of, well, most people will know, because her husband prevented her from seeing them, and she had absolutely no rights at all in the eyes of law. Anyway, at this point, she had been reunited with them, and Brinsley was ill, so she composed this little piece for him to play on his guitar and for her to sing, and it's called Juanita. It's quite lovely to do these in this parlor setting. I mean, it's unfortunate as to the circumstances, obviously, but these were really meant to be for private enjoyment. There's something very peaceful and sacred almost about these songs because I don't know, if you're researching Caroline Sheridan Norton's life, it's one nasty thing after another. It's horrible things that happened. I can't even begin to, we would be here for the whole time just talking about all of them, the nasty things that happened to her, from the public and for, you know, at every turn there's something horrible. Her youngest son died of tetanus because she was denied access to him, and nobody cleaned his wound properly when he fell off his horse. I mean, all of this sort of thing. But then, and you find these books with all of these things, and then finally, if you're looking in the British Library, which we can't go in right now, then suddenly you see these songs, and they're so peaceful, and there's something wonderful about them. It's all, the words are by women, the music's by women, the dedicatees are women, and there's something about it where it's very private. You just got the sense that these women did this in the most private enclaves of their houses for each other. They weren't really commercial enterprises, these songs, although she did make money from them, and didn't get access to that money because of her husband and because of the laws, until she changed the laws. And so there's something really, really quite lovely about that. And so now that we're here in our living rooms, it's really, I feel that the spirit of these songs, the intimate spirit, can sort of breathe. This next one, Love Not. The words she wrote in her anonymously published Sorrows of Rosalie in 1829. That was the same year that her first son was born, Fletcher. And by that time already, the marriage was not in a good way. I mean, he was physically and mentally abusive, her husband. And so I think that the Sorrows of Rosalie and these words, I think they are quite meant. Love not. Love not, ye hapless sons of clay. so strange. The silence, but the feeling that people are listening. I've never done this before. This next one, now we're going to go ahead in time quite a bit to 1877. This is Annie Fortescue Harrison, and this song has such a wonderful story. I have to tell it. In fact, if you go to my YouTube, I tell it there. It's got its own video. In the gloaming, there we are. There you can see it's wonderful. Another huge smash sensation. This one, well, I say another because Juanita was very, very famous, the first one. This song, Annie Fortescue Harrison, she was the daughter of an obscure politician she was born in Calcutta actually, and she spent her time at Hillsborough Castle in County Down, and she fell in love with the son of the castle, the heir, and his parents disapproved of the match, so she left without a word. She went to, I think, London, and she found this poem by Meta Ored. And Meta Ored, she wrote these poems. Meta Ored was from 1845 to 1925. Meta Caroline Ored, she wrote poems mostly of a very gloomy and very anguished nature. One of hers is a set of 22 poems called Ave, which is as anguished as anything you'll find in the Winterreise, let me tell you. And Meta Ored wrote this In the Gloaming poem, and Annie read it and she set it to music, and it became so popular that the son of Hillsborough Castle, wandering the world, heard it, didn't know who wrote it, thought this song really is exactly what happened to me and Annie, and I wonder where she is now. And so he looked up who wrote it just out of curiosity, and what do you know, it was written by Annie, his dear Annie, and he found her, and they married, they had a daughter, and lived happily ever after. A true story. So there we are, Annie Fortescue Harrison. She lived from 1848 to 1944. And this is that song.
When
Oh, thank you. That one was hugely popular, hugely popular. It's amazing. Even though they were popular, sometimes it never was brought to anyone's attention that who wrote them, let alone whether they were women or men. This next, we're going to do now two songs by Clarabelle, which was the pen name for Charlotte Allington Barnard. And she died at the age of 39 of typhus. She was, lots of stories about her, but she started, along with a friend of hers, another Charlotte Sainton Dolby, who was a contralto, in fact, favorite contralto of Mendelssohn, apparently. She was also a songwriter. She wrote songs, and she had a conversation. Charlotte Sainton Dolby, friend of Clarabelle's, had a conversation with William Boosey of the famous Boosey, yeah, before it was Boosey Hawkes, but Boosey's publishers. And she decided that what would be a really good idea would be to have what was then known as a ballad concert, or a royalty concert, wherein the performer would get a cut of the sheet music sales that would result after a concert. So the publisher would make money, the performer would make money, and the composer would make money because of course you couldn't buy a recording. So if you wanted to recreate a piece of music, you'd do it in your home. This was back in the 1860s, I believe, 1860s. And so she started this. And one of the most popular composers turned out to be her friend, Charlotte Allington Barnard, or Clarabelle, who wrote these ballads, which you could play at home and you could sing, and they were well within the compass of the average person rather than the prima donna. And you would have thought everybody would be happy, but actually the critics, many of whom had rival publishing companies, incidentally, decided that this was a terrible idea, that it would degrade public taste, because the pieces of music that were the most easily replicated at home would be the ones that would sell the best, and thus the simple songs would sell the best, and thus the degradation of public taste. And the vitriol they poured out over Clarabelle for writing simple songs was really stunning. Like, they did horrible, rude poems, which they print in these satirical magazines. It's just horrendous. And she didn't take it well. It made her ill, actually. But anyway, she was very popular, very popular. And this is her most popular one. It's called Take Back the Heart. It was written in 1864. Clarabelle's dates, by the way, are 1830 to 1869. And the words are by Marianne Dannett, who all we know is she died in 1871. She's credited as being G.R. Gifford, which is Mrs. George Gifford, the first wife of the Honourable George Gifford, Rector of Devon, and apparently the first wife. So that gives you a clue as to these words. These words are definitely expressing something. Take back the heart that thou gavest. What is my anguish to thee? Take back the freedom thou cravest, leaving the fetters to me. Take back the vows thou hast spoken, fling them aside and be free. Smile o'er each pitiful token, leaving the sorrow to me. Drink deep of life's fond illusion, gaze on the storm cloud and flee swiftly through strife and confusion, leaving the burden to me. Then when at last overtaken, Clarabelle denied during her lifetime that this was from the perspective of a woman, interestingly. Publicly denied, but definitely it is. There is a record, Ruskin spoke of her coming to his house and playing that piece of music and singing it to Clarabelle. It's interesting. It seems that the further back you go with these, in the 1830s, 40s, 50s, the words are sad, the music is gently sort of, what would you say?
It's gently flowing, actually,
It's
in quite
flowing.
a pleasant way.
Pleasant. It's
Yeah.
it's not in the minor key. They're all in the major key. They're not sort of
The major, very bright key.
very, yeah, and it's sort of almost as if it's genteel and it's resigned. It's like, well, we're in our lovely parlors and this is what it is, but we're going to be sort of somehow elegant about it. It's very interesting. In fact, if you look at Caroline Norton's songs and the songs of her sister, they're all anguished words, and you read the music and it's flowing and optimistic sounding. Very interesting juxtaposition. Very interesting. This next one, actually, I just said that the previous one was Clarabelle's greatest hit. It's kind of tied with this one. When I was growing up, and I collected old sheet music as a child because it was, my parents didn't have much money, and sheet music was a kind of antique that a child could afford with pennies. In fact, you could get it for nothing. If you asked people, you'd say, do you have any old sheet music? And they'd say, here, take it. So that's when I found out that there were a lot of women in music, which I wouldn't have known from my grade 1, 2, 3 piano exam pieces. I thought, oh, composers are men. And then when I collected old sheet music, suddenly I realized composers are women too. And what was I saying?
Well, that's the next one.
I've lost.
People walk into the room.
No.
My husband was just looking for a shirt. Yeah,
He could look for shirts. He's allowed to.
I'm sorry.
Bless him. No. It wasn't for him. It was me getting lost in my childhood all of a sudden, which is always a mistake. But no, Clarabelle. When I saw her name, I thought that it was a county in Ireland. I thought Clarabelle must be folk song, because the one that I saw mostly, other than Take Back the Heart, is this one, which is called Come Back to Erin Mavourneen. And you'd think it was an Irish folk song. In fact, many women's songs are often credited as folk songs, including, of course, Juanita, the first one. It's often says Spanish folk song on the old sheet music. But this makes you wonder how many folk songs were actually written by women. Something for someone to study. Anyway, this is Come Back to Erin Mavourneen by Clarabelle, Charlotte Allington Barnard. Come back to Erin Mavourneen, Mavourneen. Come back a room to the land of my birth. Come with the shamrocks and springtime, Mavourneen, and its Killarney shall ring with our mirth. Sure, when we lent ye to beautiful England, little we thought of the lone winter days. Little we thought of the hush of the starshine over the mountain, the bluffs, and the braes. So come back to Erin Mavourneen, Mavourneen. Come back a room to the land of thy birth. basically it would sound more like an Irish folk song if it had a different kind of accompaniment. You can imagine that. In fact, you can imagine a lot of these tunes with different accompaniment sounding all sorts of different ways.
Well, I'm trying to alter them as well.
Yes, you are.
The way they're written, they're so simple and repetitive. So,
yes, it's expected in those days. It was expected that the printed note was kind of a guideline, and that you could add arpeggios or you could do what you like. That it was a starting point. Anyway, we've come to our last one. This is "Forget Me Not" by the Honourable Mrs. Norton, inscribed to Mrs. Mennell. Now there's a name. They're all inscribed to, all of Caroline Sheridan Norton's are inscribed to different other women. Some of them very interesting women. In fact, that could be also the subject of some sort of study, is the dedicatees of Caroline Sheridan Norton's songs. So "Forget Me Not," it's actually, when I came back from the British Library with a whole bunch of these scans of Norton's songs, most of which I would be very interested. I don't think anybody's recorded "Forget Me Not." I don't think anybody's recorded or even performed "Love Not," the second one we did. "Juanita" has been done a few times. But really, anyway, so I brought this big stack and I showed them all to Andrea, and this was the one that Andrea chose as her favorite.
But you always say this, but I don't really know.
It is true, you did.
Why? I know I did. I think I like the title. I think I found it quite symbolic that we're doing music by these women that are forgotten, and here is a song called "Forget Me Not."
Yeah.
I think that it was just quite symbolic, I thought.
It's got a beautiful tune. It really is. So, and the poem, actually, I had to write it out rather than, there was no copy and paste available for this one from any Google Books or anything like that. I had to write it out because nowhere is it reproduced on the internet. Not that I rely on the internet for my research, by the way. I rely on books. But, when you're sending a text, you kind of go, I'm going to write it all out. I shall just sort of copy and paste it, just for the text. But I couldn't find this one anywhere. So, interesting. You're getting it from the LSE for the first time in a written form, in a shareable format. "Forget Me Not," and thank you so much for coming. This is so intimate and lovely from Andrea's parlour.
Yes.
Our parlour to your parlour. Forget me not. a little concert. Thank you very much. Thank you, Debbie. Thank
That's
you,
right. That's
Andrea.
brilliant. Thank you so much. So what? So we have got a few questions coming in. So let me just, Maurice. I'm just getting to you so I can unmute you, Smriti, and then Joe. Okay. So I'm going to unmute you so you can ask your question. Okay. So you should be unmuted now. Are you? No.
Move up close.
I'm trying to do it. Don't know why it's not letting me do it. Have I done it? If Smriti's there, could you ask your question? Otherwise, I can ask it for you.
I move this like this, should I?
Yeah, if you're a bit closer, that's fine. Oh,
There we
there you
go.
go.
Oh,
Smriti?
I got to thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coming, as it were.
Okay, so I'm going to ask the question because the microphone's not working for her, but she asked a very interesting question. She said, have the professional prospects of female composers and poets changed or improved from the 1800s and early 1900s? Or do they still face social and economic constraints when pursuing their careers? Thank you.
From 1800 to early 1900.
Oh, from then to
From then
now,
to
or
now, yeah.
I think it's improved a lot.
Yes.
A lot, because there's legal things. There's a lot of support actually for. In fact, very often I wish that I was a composer, because very often I'll get sort of, oh, women in music, and then it's like, if you've written something you can apply for this, and I'm like, no, I'm just presenting and singing them. But actually, having said that, I mean, honestly, growing up, and that expression, you've got to see it to be it. It's very representation, so important, which is why we're doing our little part to show that there is precedent. Because I remember growing up and thinking, oh, right, well, I'm not composing's not for me. And these things really count. They really count, because it means the difference. I've spoken to so many women, older women particularly, who say, when I was a child, I used to think up tunes all the time, but I never thought to do anything with them. So yeah, but in terms of professional prospects, yeah, professionally, there's a lot of opportunity to get your stuff performed. Although it would help if a lot of venues would program more stuff. There are certain places and organizations that are very stick in the mud, very sort of unadventurous, very kind of, oh no, we've got to do what people have on their CD collection from 1990. Otherwise, nobody will come.
But you can also say it's still not equal. Like women are not equal with men in the profession.
Right.
Would you agree?
Yeah, I suppose, yeah, in the
Well,
profession.
definitely. Think of
Yeah.
conductors, for example. I know we
Oh,
talk about
yes.
composers and poets, but yeah, there is much more female initiative going on at the moment. Whether that's the thing of the time or fashionable right now, I don't know.
Let's hope it's
But we
lasting.
need to, I think,
Yeah.
be more active in that field. I think still there is
Yes.
still more to do.
Get your stuff out there. If you've got tunes in your head, write them down.
Yes.
Brilliant. There's another question from Jo. I'm just going to unmute her, see if her microphone works. And
yeah, it's working.
brilliant.
Oh, hello.
Hi, good to see you. Thank you very much. That was so beautiful. I really felt I was there with you. So thank you. The question, you sort of partly answered it already, but I'll ask it anyway. How did this music and these songs get prominence? How did they get circulated? I mean,
they definitely did get circulated. I mean, that's the thing. Often as anonymous, and also there was a lot of banditry and what do you call that? Piracy. And I mean, take back the heart, for example, of Clarabelle. In America, it had 17 different publishers publish it, not giving her a penny. In fact, Clarabelle had a huge vogue in the States after the Civil War, because after all that death, there's so many died in the Civil War. They loved the simplicity and the optimism of her songs. But yeah, no, this is the thing. This is part of the book, is that some of these women had the most like immense sales in terms of music. They didn't always have the ability to negotiate for good royalties or
Or they could be published under their real name. Right?
yeah,
You said that already.
yeah. But certainly they did get circulated, which is what which is why my sheet music collection when I was a child was going, oh, here are the women. It's interesting. And yet, even with that, going back to the other question, actually, even with that, that's very interesting because you'd have thought that as a child, having had that insight, that I would have thought, oh, good, then I can also be a composer. But I saw the genre as being so past. It wasn't in the curriculum. It wasn't in the syllabus anymore. It was in these flaky old pieces of music that seemed to have their own kind of past life and not a present.
So it's not taken seriously.
They're not taken exactly.
It's still not taken seriously.
It's still not taken seriously. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's still hard to program these. Um, of course, what you just heard was a particular time, and of course, the tonality of that time is less adventurous than say something you'd get from something you'd get from like 1900 or 1910 or something when you got sort of post-romanticism and all sorts of things influencing it. These were very, very harmonically domestic.
So
Yeah.
everyone could play them easily. I think that was probably the selling point as well, that they wanted to write something that anyone could sit down and reproduce easily.
Accessibility, which now is getting its due. I mean, people are starting to look at simple songs and go like, they call Sir Paul McCartney a great composer. And bless him, it doesn't get that. I mean, he's no Mahler. But people call it a great composer. So if we can take simple songs and go, well, actually, the simplicity in that has some merit intrinsically, then I think we can look back and sort of reappraise these women and go, actually, in its genre, let's take the genre seriously and not sing it. I mean, when I was growing up, if you did hear these songs, they were very often done by a kind of prima donna pretending, sort of going like, now I'm going to do something very old-fashioned and charming, ooh, and they'd have an archness and they wouldn't have any genuine emotion in these songs. And without the genuineness, it kills it dead. Anyway, sorry, that was very long-winded. That's why I'm a singer.
Has anybody else got any questions? If do put them on chat if you want to ask one. In the meantime, I'm going to say what it reminded me of, which is that scene in Pride and Prejudice. The TV adaptation with Colin Firth, obviously, and Elizabeth's playing. She forgets to turn the pages for Georgina, and they have that moment, don't they, of the piano. And I was just thinking about all those sort of parlours, and of course, it's very middle class, upper middle class, even upper class, to do all this music, but all those things in 19th century novels, from Jane Austen through to Elizabeth Gaskell, but the Brontes, but also even Trollope, even men wrote about this, the kind of love scenes over the piano.
The propriety of page turning was something that people, young ladies would ask, write into to magazines and say, well, what is a propriety in page turning? Do you lean? How close can he get to you, and things like that. And also when you talk about middle class, actually, that's very interesting because when pianos started to be mass produced in the 1890s, or even earlier, they started to mass produce pianos, and even sort of working class people could afford to buy a piano on a buy to let sort of, or let to buy sort of thing. Then the upper class women and young ladies had to move on to the violin because they had to maintain the exclusivity. So, no, the working class girls who started to play the piano will have to do, violins are more expensive. It's quite funny. Not in a big way.
I didn't know that. That's really interesting because I was struck when so I'm sort of moving north, and I was struck when I was looking at houses up there, at how many houses had pianos in them. And it's something I remember growing up in London. Of course, nobody has a piano. Very few people have pianos because of the space and stuff. But I also wonder if it's partly that, and they'd always inherited them from their granny or great granny. But these weren't particularly middle class people. It's that thing of it does make me wonder, actually, that kind of tradition of, you know, you'd hand your piano down, and it wasn't always middle class, actually.
It's the history of pianos, and yeah. Andrea has a piano academy, piano maestros, and so she's very hot on this subject. No, but it's interesting because it's all about, especially now, because we can't look at live venues. They're going, you know, everybody's talking about the peril of live music, and these venues are going to die. And I honestly think this is the time that people should start to learn instruments again. I mean, think of all the elderly who are never going to escape from lockdown, you know, and who aren't going to go to, and, you know, honestly, their children should start to learn the piano or learn the auto harp or something, so to bring some music into the home again. So it's the only way we're going to have live music for a lot of people now.
We'll have to start making music at home again.
We will.
Just like now, and more of it. We need more of it.
My son plays the recording ukulele, but I'm not sure that I count that as live music, but that's probably being...
Yes, it is.
I should pretend I've not said that.
If you got one person do the ukulele, another person do the recorder, there's some good songs in there.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting because actually they have been doing it virtually, and my husband's now learning the ukulele, but his hand's too big for it, so I kind of, it really should be me doing it, but I don't think I'll put the words for that.
Baritone ukulele, they're a bit bigger.
Has anybody got any more questions? There's no more come in, so if there's a last chance to ask any questions, I'm going to share the screen again just for a moment. So if anybody wants to think of any questions, the last, just going to do this while I do. So if anybody would like to put, if anybody would like to give any feedback, we can go to menti.com. You can either do it now or you can do it tomorrow, and I'll send the link round, and you put this code in. It's 924629.
Wow, all this, so new to me.
Polls, it's partly to find out who people are, but then if you go into the second side, it just says, can you just write you know, anything that you think about the performance. We've recorded some stuff in chat, so we get feedback, which is great, but yeah, it's just a live way of doing the polling. So I'll leave that up for a moment, and then I also I'll put that there, menti.com 924629. If anybody would like to do that now, that would be great. Thank you. I can see things coming in. And then just to say that the other thing is just, I've left it off, so menti.com, and then it's gone. Just to say that this, Louise Jordan, she performs last year. She did a sort of play stroke songs it was a year ago, actually, wasn't it, Maria? It was about a year ago, it was last June. And she did an online pop quiz about Florence Nightingale recently, and she's got one about World War I, and various academics, especially some women in World War I, have put questions, and that is the quiz link. I think she's finding lockdown a bit boring, so she asked us to just promote this. The things that we do. So if anybody's interested, if you go to her website, and there's a thing about the quiz there. So I just said I'd do a shout out for it today. And yes, and that's the menti.com. I've put it back up now for 92. The code is 924629. So if you wouldn't mind putting that in, that'd be great. I'll just stop the screen sharing for a moment, so I can see if there's any more questions. Don't think